Truth is a Mercury shadow, fluid and elusive, shifting its shape just as you think you have finally caught it. Dive into our latest mystery, where nothing is as it seems, and everyone has a hidden agenda. Hit subscribe now and help us track the truth today.
Graduation ceremony was supposed to start at 2 in the afternoon. I'd been awake since 5. Not because I was nervous. I'd defended my thesis 3 weeks earlier and passed on the first try. I was awake because I'd spent the night before ironing my dress, polishing my shoes, and making a playlist for the drive to campus. Small things. The kind of things you do when you want a day to feel like it deserves to. I was the first person in my family to finish a master's degree. My mom liked to remind people of that at church, at the grocery store, at the dentist. My daughter, she's getting her master's. She'd say it with her chin lifted a little. I used to smile when she told me. I thought she was proud. My phone buzzed at 8:14 a.m. It was my brother. Not a congratulations. Not a, we're leaving soon. It was a single line. Hey, can't make it today. Something came up. I stared at the message for a long time. Something came up. On the day I'd circled on my calendar for 6 months. On the day I'd bought an extra ticket for, just for him. Even though I only had 2 guests allowed and had to call the department coordinator and explain and ask and wait. I typed back. What do you mean? Something came up. He left me on read. I told myself it was fine. He was 22. He was forgetful. My parents were coming. That was what mattered. I texted my mom, "Are you all on your way?" She responded 20 minutes later. "We're getting ready, honey. So proud of you." I breathed. Okay, good. I drove to campus alone. Parked. Put on my cap and down in the car because I didn't want to carry it in a bag. I looked ridiculous walking across the parking lot, but I didn't care. I felt good. I'd worked for this. 4 years of undergrad, 2.5 years of grad school, 1 thesis, 1 defense, and a lot of instant ramen. I had earned this moment. The ceremony started at 2007. By 2:30, the seat I'd reserved for my mom was still empty. I kept glancing at the section where guests sat. There were families with balloons, with flowers, with little kids on their laps. There were fathers holding up phones to record. There were grandmothers in their church best, fanning themselves in the heat. My section had 2 empty seats. I told myself traffic. I told myself parking. I told myself these things while they read the names of my classmates, and everyone around me stood up to cheers and cameras flashing. When they called my name, I walked across the stage alone. I shook the dean's hand. I smiled at the photographer. And then I walked back to my seat and looked at the guest section one more time. Still empty. I didn't cry. I didn't want to cry in that room with 300 people watching. I swallowed it down and I sat there with my hands folded in my lap until the very last name was called. After the ceremony, I stood outside on the lawn for 45 minutes. People kept taking photos around me. A woman asked if I wanted her to take one of me by the fountain. I said yes. She handed me back my phone and smiled and said congratulations, and that was the kindest thing anyone said to me all day. I texted my mom, "It's over. Where are you?" She responded 22 minutes later. Not with words, with a photo. It was a restaurant. Nice one. Not our usual diner. Not the pizza place we went to for every birthday since I was 7. This was the kind of place with white tablecloths and a bread basket on every table. And sitting around that table were my mom, my dad, my brother, my aunt, and my cousin who lives 2 hours away and apparently had no problem making the drive today. The caption she sent with it was, "We're celebrating Marcus's promotion. Wish you were here." My brother works at a car dealership. He'd been promoted from sales associate to senior sales associate. I read that message 4 times. Then I put my phone face down on the passenger seat and I drove home. Here is what you need to understand before I tell you what happened next. For the past 3 years, I had been the financial backbone of my family. Not because anyone asked me directly. It never works that way. It works slowly, quietly, until one day you look up and realize you're the one holding everything together and nobody even noticed. It started when my dad had his back surgery. He was out of work for 4 months, and the disability payments weren't covering everything. I was in my second year of grad school, working a 20-hour-a-week assistantship and picking up tutoring clients on the side. I started sending home $400 a month, just to help. Just temporarily. Then my mom's car died. She needed a reliable car to get to work. She's a home health aide. She drives to clients' houses every day. My credit score was better than hers. I co-signed her auto loan. The payment was $287 a month. My name was on it. Then my brother decided he didn't want to finish community college and needed to figure things out, which in practice meant living at home rent-free, while my parents covered his phone bill, his car insurance, his everything. And somehow, whenever my parents were short that month, the call came to me. I am not saying I gave all of this begrudgingly. At the time, I told myself it was what you do. You help your family. You don't let them struggle when you have something to give. I believe that. But I also want to be honest about something. I was running on fumes. I was finishing a thesis, teaching undergraduate sections, tutoring 3 clients a week, and sending money home. I was eating 1 real meal a day for a semester because groceries were tight. I never told anyone that. I didn't think I was allowed to. My mom knew the broad strokes of my finances. She knew I was co-signed on her car. She knew I sent money when they needed it. She didn't know how thin I was stretched because I never let her see it. I had given them 3 years. 3 years of showing up. And on the one day I needed them to show up for me, they were at a white tablecloth restaurant celebrating my brother's job title. I sat in my apartment that night in my graduation dress and I made a list, not of grievances, a list of facts. Fact 1. My name was on my mom's auto loan. $287 a month, 14 months remaining. Fact 2. I had been sending $400 a month home since my dad's surgery. He had been back at work for 8 months. Fact 3. My brother was 22 years old, employed full-time, and had never once contributed to any household expense. Fact 4. I had a master's degree and a job offer starting in 6 weeks. I looked at the list for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and I started making calls. The first thing I did was call my bank. Not to do anything dramatic, just to understand my options. I had automatic transfers set up. The $400 a month going home had been automatic for so long I'd almost stopped thinking about it. I looked at the transaction history, 38 transfers, 38 months, give or take. I canceled the automatic transfer that night. The second thing I did was call the dealership where my mom's car loan was serviced. I explained that I was a cosigner and I wanted to understand the process of removing myself from the loan. They told me it required refinancing on my mom's end. She would need to qualify on her own or find a new cosigner. I noted that. I didn't act on it immediately. But I noted it. The third thing I did was write a letter. Not to send. Just to write. I needed to see my thoughts outside of my head. I wrote about the empty seats. I wrote about the photo with the white tablecloths. I wrote about 38 months of transfers. I wrote about the semester I ate 1 real meal a day. I wrote about the thesis I finished at midnight 3 weeks ago, alone in my apartment, with nobody to call because it was too late and I didn't want to bother anyone. Then I put the letter in my desk drawer and I went to sleep. My mom called the next morning at 9:15. "Hey, honey, how was the ceremony?" I let a beat pass before I answered. "It was good. Sorry we couldn't make it. You know Marcus's news just came out of nowhere, and your aunt came all this way, Mom." I kept my voice even. "I had a seat reserved for you. I called the department office specifically to get you a guest ticket." Silence. "I know, honey, I feel bad about that, but you understand, right? It's not like I'm not angry," I said, which was partially true. I was something, but angry wasn't quite the right word. "I just want you to know I noticed. And I want you to know I'm going to be making some changes on my end." Another silence. Longer this time. "What kind of changes?" "Financial ones. I'm starting my new job in 6 weeks and I'm going to be restructuring my budget. The automatic transfers are going to stop." I heard her breath catch. "Sweetheart, I'll give you 30 days notice." "That's fair. I think that's fair." She started talking faster then. About how much they'd come to rely on it. About my dad's knee, which had been bothering him. His back surgery was 3 years ago. Now it was the knee, there was always something. about how my brother wasn't making enough yet at his new position to contribute to household expenses. I let her talk. When she finished, I said, "I love you. I'll call you this weekend." And I hung up. My dad called that evening. This surprised me. My dad doesn't usually make calls. My mom is the one who calls. My dad is the one who shows up or doesn't. And in our family, that divide had always been clear. He didn't open with hello. He opened with, "You can't just cut off the family." I said, "I'm not cutting off the family. I'm stopping an automatic bank transfer. Do you know how much we depend on that?" "I do actually, because I set it up, and I've been maintaining it for 38 months. Your mother is worried sick." I thought about that for a moment. About what it meant that my mom was worried sick about the money and not about the 2 empty seats at my graduation ceremony. About the call I did not get at 2 in the afternoon when the dean handed me my diploma. "I'm sure she is," I said. "You're being selfish." I had expected that word. I'd been expecting it since the night before when I canceled the transfer. There it was. "Dad," I said, "I didn't get a single call during my graduation. Not from you? Not from Mom? Not from my brother? You were at a restaurant. I walked across the stage by myself. And a day after, the first concern is the bank transfer." He said, "That's not fair." I said, "I'll talk to you later." The 30 days passed. My brother texted me once during that time. It was a long message about how I was hurting the family, how my mom had been crying, how he thought I was being dramatic about the graduation thing because it's just a ceremony. You have the degree, either way. He had the nerve to add that he would have come, but nobody told him it was that important to me. I read the message. I didn't respond. What would I have said? My aunt, my mom's sister, the one who made the drive to celebrate my brother's job title, sent me a Facebook message. She told me I was breaking my mother's heart. I unfollowed her without responding. On the 31st day, the automatic transfer was gone. On the 32nd day, I called the loan servicer again. I told them I wanted to initiate the process of removing myself as cosigner. They confirmed my mom would need to refinance. I asked them to send the written information to my email. Then I called my mom. I told her I was not removing myself immediately. I understood that refinancing took time and I wasn't going to blow up her credit out of spite. But I told her she had 90 days to refinance the loan into her name alone or find a cosigner. I told her I would not be renewing. She asked me why I was doing this. I said, "Because my name being on that loan makes me financially responsible for a car that belongs to someone who didn't come to my graduation. That doesn't make sense to me anymore." She cried. I held the phone and I let her cry because I didn't have anything else to say and I'd already said the true things. I want to be careful here. I am not going to tell you that I felt triumphant. I didn't wake up the next morning feeling vindicated. What I felt was tired and a little sad, and also, underneath the tired and the sad, something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Light. Like I had been carrying something for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like not to carry it, and now my shoulders didn't know what to do with themselves. I started my new job 4 weeks after that. Benefits package, 401k match, the whole thing. A real salary, more than I'd ever made in my life. And for the first time in 3 years, all of it was mine. I took myself to dinner the night of my first paycheck. Sat at the bar at a nice place downtown. Not white tablecloths, but close. And ordered a steak and a glass of wine. And sat there by myself for 2 hours and felt okay. My grandmother called me in October. She's my dad's mother. She's 79, lives alone in the house she's been in since 1987, calls me every few months to check in. She does not involve herself in family drama. She is not a person who takes sides. She is also, quietly, the sharpest person in our family. She asked me how the new job was going. I told her well. She asked if I was eating. I said yes, actually eating 3 times a day. She laughed. Then she said, "I heard about the graduation." I didn't say anything. "I'm sorry," she said. "That wasn't right." I said, "It's okay." She said, "It's not, but you're going to be fine anyway. You've always been fine anyway. You're the only one in that family who learned how to carry your own weight and still had enough left over to carry everyone else's. At some point, you were going to have to put it down. I had to set the phone on the counter for a second. When I picked it back up, she was still talking. I want you to know I was watching. Even when I wasn't there, I was paying attention. You've done things that nobody acknowledged and nobody thanked you for. I'm thanking you now. And I'm telling you that what you did, walking away from that loan, stopping that transfer, that wasn't cruelty. That was sense. I asked her how she knew about all of that. She said, "Your mother calls me crying." But she told me everything, whether she meant to or not. I laughed. The first real laugh I'd had in weeks. She paused, and then she said something that I have written down and kept. She said, "You showed up for them the whole time. Nobody showed up for you. So now you show up for you. So now you show up for yourself. That's not a betrayal. That's just taking your turn." My mom refinanced the car loan 11 weeks into the 90 days. She didn't tell me until it was done. She texted me a screenshot of the new loan document with her name only at the top. I texted back, "Thank you for handling that." She didn't respond. We have a different relationship now. It's quieter. There are things we don't talk about. She does not ask me for money. I do not offer. When she calls, we talk about surface things. Weather. Her clients, whether I've seen any good movies lately. It feels then sometimes like we're both being careful with something fragile. But I show up to those calls. That's more than I can say for a certain afternoon in May. My brother got his own apartment 6 months after all of this. His girlfriend moved in with him. He seems fine. We text sometimes, not often. He has not once mentioned the graduation. My dad's knee is apparently better. He's back to working full hours. And me. I'm sitting in my own apartment, the one I chose, in the city I chose, furnished with things I bought with my own money, without calculating whether I could afford it, and still send $400 home. My diploma is on the wall. A woman took a photo of me in front of a fountain the day I graduated, and I'm in it alone, and I'm smiling, and it's one of my favorite pictures of myself. I looked at it this morning before I left for work. My grandmother was right. It was my turn. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. The transfers, the loan, all of it. They mean well when they ask. They want me to say something complicated, something that shows I've wrestled with it, and I have. I'm not going to pretend I made those decisions without cost, but here's what I've come to understand about that whole chapter of my life. Nobody handed me a bill for 3 years of giving. I wrote that invoice myself, quietly, and slid it under my own door every month. And when the day finally came, the one day I needed something back, the bill came due in a way I didn't choose. The empty seats chose it for me. That's not punishment. That's just how things work. When you pour into people for years without ever asking them to show up, you train them not to show up. You teach people how to treat you not with lectures, but with patterns. My pattern, for 38 months, was, I will always be there and it will cost you nothing. I taught that without meaning to, and they learned it perfectly. What changed wasn't them. It was me finally deciding to change the pattern. I think about what it actually takes to do that, to interrupt a dynamic that feels as normal as breathing. It's not anger that gets you there. Anger burns fast and makes a mess. What gets you there is something quieter. A moment of clarity where you look at the facts as facts, not as feelings. I made a list that night in my graduation dress. Not of wounds, of numbers, names, dates. I needed to see it outside my head before I could act on it. That was the intelligence part, not being smart in some abstract way, but being honest with myself about what was actually happening. And then there's the part that nobody talks about, the follow-through. It's easy to cancel a transfer in a moment of hurt. It's harder to hold that line when your mother is crying on the phone, and your father is saying you're selfish, and your brother's text is sitting there unread. That's where character actually lives. Not in the decision, but in every quiet morning after the decision, when you could still take it back and you don't. My grandmother said I was the only one in the family who learned to carry my own weight and still had enough left over to carry everyone else's. I've thought about that a lot. I think she was right. But I also think she was describing a trap as much as a strength. Because a person who always has enough left over never gets asked how much they have left. They just get asked for more. Taking my turn wasn't selfish. Taking my turn was the only honest thing left to do. I still have the photo from the fountain. Woman I'll never see again, phone in my hand, me in my cap and gown. Alone in the frame, smiling anyway. That's the story I want to keep telling myself. Not the empty seats, not the missed calls. The fountain, the smile. The woman who was kind enough to stop and take the picture without being asked. That was enough. It was always enough. I just had to finally believe it.